I call this meeting of the Seminole County Animal Control Board into order. Please silence all phones and electric devices, and if we can, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The functions of the Animal Control Board are as follows. Make recommendations to the Chief Administrator for the Office of Emergency Management regarding animal care and regulations consistent with the Florida Statute and Chapter 20 of the Seminole County Code. These recommendations must first be approved by the majority of the Animal Control Board prior to the submission to the Chief Administrator for the Office of Emergency Management. The Animal Control Board shall meet at least 3 times per year. Special meetings may be called by the chairman or vice chairman or by any 3 members of the board upon 48 hours notice to all members and animal control officers and chief administrator for emergency management. A majority of the Animal Control Board will consist or constitute as a quorum. Public participation. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has a right to be heard on all propositions. Public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals, 6 minutes for group representatives. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on a non-agenda matter at the end of the meeting. Proper decorum will be observed. At this time, we are going to do roll call.
John McGrath, absent. Mr. Brian Wilson, absent. Ms. Bridget Lake, absent. Ms. Gail Hare,
Present.
present. Dr. Viz,
Present.
Detective Monk,
Present.
and Chris Buchanan.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
All right. We've all had a chance to look over the minutes from the March 14th meeting. Does anybody have any questions? Nope. All right. Do we have a motion to accept the old minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the last
All
meeting.
right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Minutes are accepted. And now on to old business.
Chairman, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Lanius with the County Attorney's Office, and board members, it's nice to be here in front of you today. You guys left me with some questions at the March hearing, or I'm sorry, the March meeting that I wanted to follow up with you today. There were about 3 of them, and I'm only going to take a few minutes of your time. So one of the questions that you guys left me with was, there was an inquiry about if we were to change the Chapter 20 of the code and rename animal control to animal welfare throughout that chapter, what exactly would that take? How much of a lift, so to speak, would that be? And so I've reviewed Chapter 20 of the code, and I wanted to let you know that there are many, obviously, citations or references to the term control. And if we were to amend that entire chapter from Animal Control Board or Animal Control Services to Animal Welfare Board or Animal Welfare Services, it would require amending the code 111 times, and that would be, I believe, 35 sections. Now, I've provided Animal Services a list of the required codes that would have to be amended, and can we pull that up for the board members? Can we pull up the list I sent?
Which one?
The list that has the 35 sections that would be required to be.
They have the list.
Oh.
The list on there. They have the list in their packet.
Okay, so you guys have the list in your packet. I essentially listed every section within Chapter 20 that would require a change. And it wouldn't be a complicated change, but we would have to change each of them. We would have to make those required changes. Any questions on that front?
I would like to ask a question about what is the benefit of just changing the word from control to welfare, other than it just sounds better?
Well,
I missed that part. I don't understand why we were going to do it. I was here, but I
Sure.
did, sorry.
I don't know that it would necessarily be a question to me. You guys are the policy makers, and I follow the lead of others. So if you're asking for what is the policy behind that change, I would defer to some other people here. But if that is the policy route that we would want to take, I know how to implement it. But as for why we would do it, I would defer to the
Did you
board.
read, why did they want to do it?
So I believe the thought was that by us stating we were animal control board, that we were over animal control itself, which we're not animal control.
But we're advisory board.
Right.
We advise.
Right, and I think that's why they were wanting, and I'm not, for me, it's been animal control board forever, so I'm okay with it, but that was my understanding is that Alan Harris.
Mr. Chair, Alan Harris, Director of Emergency Management, oversees Animal Services Division. This was actually a request from a resident. The resident was interested in changing the Animal Control Board to the Animal Welfare Board because the individual considered welfare to be more animal-friendly than we're trying to control the animals in the community. So we brought it forward to you just for information purposes if you wanted to move in that direction.
You know, I've been on the board for a long, long time. And at the beginning, it was my understanding that it was our responsibility to protect the people in Seminole County rather than the animals. You know, we take care of the animals. I'm an animal rescuer and animal lover. But that the board, that the job was to control the animals, get them off the street, you know, if they're aggressive and stuff, to protect the people. It was about the people, not the animals.
Is this something that we need to vote on now, or is this,
Well, I certainly wouldn't want him to make 100-something
Right,
changes if it wasn't really.
and I don't know if we want to wait on the other,
If there's no motion to change it, then
Then there's
we
nothing
were
to-
simply bringing it to you.
okay.
Yeah, I'm just
Yes, sir.
following up.
May I say something, please? You know what? We're all gathering to here because we have an animal overpopulation, isn't it? So if welfare allows to, relinquish the animal, there's a welfare. No, it's control. We are trying to control overpopulation, aren't we? That's my impression, you know. I mean, welfare, we all welfare the animals. We all here are animal lovers, but for me, the word control means control. We're trying to prevent
Take care of
pet
them.
overpopulation. Now, I'm all for anything, you know.
All right, well, like I said, if there's no motion to change, then I say we move on.
Absolutely. And so, so if those were all the questions. So the second issue that you guys left me with dealt with civil penalties of civil citations issued to people who allegedly have violated the code. So if somebody violates Chapter 20, Animal Services is within their rights to issue a civil citation. And I was asked about the penalties involved with those civil citations. Now, do they have a copy?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so if you guys look in your packet, and could you guys pull that up on the board just for everybody else in here? Just so everybody else has an opportunity. So I'm going to read you the important provisions here, and you guys can ask any questions if you want, but I think these provisions generally speak for themselves. So section 20.137, civil penalties. This refers to anytime somebody receives a civil citation from Animal Services. Non-criminal infractions of the Animal Control Ordinance, there's one of those controls, which do not result in a hearing will be subject to the following civil penalties. An Animal Control Ordinance violation constitutes an individual offense and will be assessed per animal. The first infraction is a $50 fine. This is if, when somebody receives a citation from Animal Services, they have the right to request a hearing in front of a judge. That's how the first penalties I'll go through is if they do not request a hearing in front of the judge. If they don't request a hearing within a certain amount of time, they lose that right. So if they do not request a hearing, the first infraction would be $50. The second infraction of that same section, so it would have to be the exact same section infracted, would be, within 3 years, would be $100. And now the third or further infractions of that same section within 3 years would be a fine of $200. And it'd be $200 for every fine after the third one of that same section within 3 years. That's for people who did not request a hearing in front of the judge. Those who do, in fact, use their legal rights to request a hearing in front of the judge will go to the judge and they will plead their case, and the Seminole County judge will make a decision. The judge will have the discretion to issue a penalty in that case, and it would be up to $500. And so that's how the civil citation penalties work in our code. If a hearing is requested, you go in front of the judge, you could win and have nothing, you could lose and have a penalty of up to $500. And if no hearing was requested, $50 for the first, $100 for the second, and $200 for the third and further. Anybody have any questions on that? No questions? Okay. Now, lastly, the final question that you guys left me with is, what is the required amount of animals that somebody may essentially breed at their home? What does the code say about that? What are the prohibitions? And so per section 20.185 in our code, do they have a copy of this?
Yes, they have a copy of that as well.
Okay. The practice of, quote, backyard breeding, and I'm going to define that, by an individual or an organization is prohibited in Seminole County. So this section does not apply to hobby breeders. And so now we have to obviously figure out what backyard breeding is versus what a hobby breeder is. Per the definitions section of the code 20.01, backyard breeder is defined as an individual or organization that utilizes a dwelling or homestead for the continuous breeding, this is important, more than 1 litter per year of animals to be sold for a profit. The sales of animals may or may not be on the property of the dwelling or homestead, but could be advertised online through other means. So a backyard breeder essentially breeding more than 1 litter per year per residence. Now, that's prohibited. What is allowed per the code is a hobby breeder. What is a hobby breeder? Hobby breeder is defined in the code as any person or entity that intentionally causes or allows willfully or through failure to exercise due care and control the breeding or studying of a dog or cat, resulting in no more than a total of 1 litter per calendar year per residence. So it's essentially hobby breeding is allowed, 1 litter per year per residence. Backyard breeding is prohibited per the code, and that'd be more than 1 litter per residence. So that's how that works, and that was the question that was presented to me. Did you guys have any questions on that front?
That's got to be a nightmare to monitor.
Well, that's for better people than me. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I appreciate you guys giving me the time, and I'm here for the rest of the night if you guys have anything further.
Thanks, sir. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Of course.
Foster updates from Madam?
Next slide. There should be a next slide. Perfect. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I wanted to give you an update on our foster program. I wanted to provide some contextual history from 2023 as well as 2024. So we are at this time currently seeing an increase in the number of animals needing foster. We're seeing a number of increase in the number of people willing to foster. And what you will see on the slide here is a program that we are allowing, which is called Foster to Adopt. So individuals who are interested in adopting, but the pet is not quite ready for adoption, we also are allowing that as well. If you go to the next slide. If you look at our current numbers, we have 114 cats and 4 dogs, totaling 118 currently in our foster care program. We also have our BFF program, which is individuals who are in high school who are using that as volunteer hours as part of their project. But we are currently, even just this week, we've sent out 14 cats and/or kittens just this week alone. So if you're hearing this message, we need you. We need your help. We want to foster. We want to foster more, and it's one of the life-saving aspects of what we do at Animal Services. So we really appreciate the public support. Again, the community and the shelter are one and the same. We are a reflection of the community, and we need the community's help to be able to help more animals.
There you go. All right, and that's all old business. Now on to new business. And back to Adam for the shelter procedures.
Perfect, thank you. So I wanted to take a little bit of a dive into some updates for all of you so that you're aware of some of the operational things that are happening at Animal Services. You can go ahead and click on each of those. So one of the things that we are doing is individuals who are bringing pets to us because they found them in their community. Those are lost pets. We are engaging the community, which is something that our industry has, quite frankly, not done enough of. We don't ask enough to have others help us. And so when individuals bring in lost pets to us, studies show that the majority of the time, in fact, a recent study was interesting, that dogs are typically lost within a quarter mile of their home, and an even greater percentage are within a few blocks of their home. And so if we engage the community and ask for their help in trying to locate the owner, we avoid having to bring that pet into the shelter. So that is something that we've been working through and has been working quite well. The community has been super supportive and allows us to extend, the work that we do and the efforts to provide as many positive outcomes as possible for the animals. So we really appreciate that. We have also started our Dogs Playing for Life. So we were very fortunate that we were able to have Dogs Playing for Life, which is a national group that focuses on reducing the stress, anxiety, fear, and frustration of our shelter dogs. Being in a cage for any long period of time is not good for their mental health. And so we found, and they have seen in a number of instances and case studies all over the country, that the more that we allow dogs to be dogs, the better their mental health is, the more adoptable they become, and the shorter duration of time they have to spend in the shelter. So we are doing play groups now on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Our team, headed up by Al and Alex, both take a group, and if you've never seen a group of more than 20 dogs playing at any given time, I can assure you it's better than watching a fish tank. So I encourage any of you, if you're interested, we encourage a participation. We actually involve our volunteers in our Dogs Playing for Life program, and we've seen a dramatic increase in both their social ability, but also it gives us more detail about the dogs themselves. As we notice in play groups, if we happen to see that they get along really well with other dogs, that's something that a new adopter would want to know. And so that in the past was not information that we had available before this enrichment program. So it's really working quite well. The other thing that we have implemented is working to identify pathways for pets at intake. So oftentimes in many progressive shelters, they will be looking, there will even be a position as a pathway planner. We don't have a position that's dedicated just to that at this time, but what we are doing is we're quickly trying to identify the fastest path and the fastest route for that pet to exit the shelter. There's a number of ways that can happen. You've seen fostering, but we have a number of other ways, and you'll hear more, I'm sure, later in regards to our TNVR program. We also work directly in determining whether or not this is something that we could transfer out to another rescue group. We actually just recently did a shelter swap with Orange County Animal Services. So we are working diligently to look at all of the options at the day of intake rather than waiting for the period of time that's required in our ordinance, which is 5 days, before we're then looking to find out what outcome is possible. So we're really trying to work diligently in identifying those pathways at the day of intake so that by that day 5, individuals know where we're going and we can move those pets out as quick as possible. One of the success stories for that is also allowing the public, again, if you're listening to me and you're interested in adopting, we certainly support adoption within our program and really rely upon that from the numbers of animals that come in. But one of the things that was taking place traditionally was that you were only able to view available pets, those pets that have already passed their 5-day stray hold period. period, then you could only view those pets after they were held the 5 days. At this time, individuals coming into our facility can see all of the animals that have come in that are still even waiting their stray hold period. And what we found is that we're increasing the number of adoptions. So individuals who are coming in, if the owner doesn't reclaim them, we want owners to reclaim. We're going to look at that number in a moment. But unfortunately, nationally is less than 22% for dogs and less than 1% for cats. So we really know that unfortunately reclaiming is not as high as it needs to be. So we want to get them out as fast as possible. Why not give the public an opportunity to put in an application for that pet well early on in its stray hold, so that by the time that we get to day 5, we already have that identified pathway and that outcome. Next, we're going to talk about some additional data. One of the things that I have been really working on at the shelter is trying to understand the big picture. And while you're going to see numbers on the screen, those numbers represent that photo. Every single number that you see on that screen represents a wet nose, represents a pawing cat in someone's lap, or represents a community cat that's in someone's driveway that's being provided care. So one of the things that I want us to all look at, and our industry has determined to be benchmarks for how well a shelter is operating. 2 of those, one is a live release rate. So I've put the definition here, but live release rate is determined by the number of live outcomes as a percentage of total outcomes of animals at the shelter. So essentially, what percentage of animals leave the shelter with a positive outcome? And that positive outcome could be transfer, it could be adoption, could be fostering. We could do all kinds of different positive outcomes. But in this particular incident, I wanted to look at traditionally what took place last year. So in 2023, our live release rate for dogs was 62%. Our live release rate for cats was sitting at 68%. And if you look at the total return to owner rates, which are listed here, the number of adoptions, that gives us a benchmark. So what did we do last year? At least gives us some idea of what the operation was doing during 2023. Go to the next slide. So March, I joined the county in February the 12th, and we've hit the ground running. We've been very excited at just in a short period of time what we've been able to do in terms of not only increasing our live release rate, but reducing the length of stay at the shelter. So if you look in March, we were able to increase our live release rate. For cats, we had 58% for dogs. That was back in 2023. So if you look at 2024, here in March, we have increased our live release rate to 76% for dogs and 66% for cats. But again, 1 month change, just looking at March of 2023 to March of 2024. Next slide. So in April, we're going to go through this rather quickly here. So looking at 2023, your live release rate for dogs was 81%, a little over, and about 69% for cats. If you look at March of this year, which was our very first month that we achieved a 90% live release rate, which is very significant. 90% is what most of the industry determines to be a no-kill, if you use that terminology, which again is a bit dated, was used long ago when euthanasia was a means of population control at the shelter, but that is what our industry has determined to be no-kill, is 90% or higher. So that was the first month that we saw that in our dog population, so 90% of the dogs that came into the shelter had a positive outcome. We noticed that in that same month, so April, we were able to increase our live release rate for cats to be just over 70%. We can go to the next slide. Next slide. So moving on to May, if you compare May of last year, we were at around 76% for our live release rate for dogs and about 71% for cats. If you compare that to May of this year, which is our second month that we have achieved a 90% or higher live release rate for dogs, we're sitting at just over 91% live release rate for dogs. But I think pretty dramatically is our live release rate for cats. We now are sitting at almost 84%. So if you compare those back to the low 60s to mid 60s in just last year, I'm incredibly proud of the work that the team is doing because it is a long, hard day, each and every day, to be identifying individuals, people and pets in crisis in our community. And not only have they supported these ideas, but it's made a significant impact on the number of animals that we can help in the community. The next benchmark I wanted to cover quickly is length of stay. Now, what does length of stay mean? And in my opinion, if anyone's curious, I believe this is a better measure of how successful the shelter is, because we don't want pets to languish in the facility. We know that as the pets stay longer within the facility, we know that it impacts their behavioral health. We know that they become more and more challenging for us to adopt. So we want to make sure that we can get them to a positive outcome as quickly as we can. So length of stay is determined by the average length of stay, and that's determined by adding the collective number of days across a given period and dividing it by the total numbers of animals at the shelter. So looking at our length of stay for the month of May, we are at 5.47 days for dogs, and for cats, we are at 6.33 days. So let's go to the next slide to give you some historical perspective there. So this is just this year alone. So in January, our length of stay for cats was 22 days. So in order for us to provide care and find a positive outcome, it took us at least 22 days on average to get to that positive outcome. If you see our trend going into February all the way down to May, I can tell you that's where you're getting to your 6 days. And let me tell you, that is a lot. For us to be able to ensure a positive outcome for a patient in our care, one day after the stray hold expires is incredibly positive and something that we want to continue, and we want to see that pattern continue. And it's great news for dogs too, so go to the next slide. So this year alone, looking in January, we had close to 20 days as an average length of stay for our dogs, and now we're looking at less than 6. So about 5 days, a little over 5 days on average now is what it took us last month. And that pattern, I'm incredibly excited to say, is happening due to the incredibly hard work efforts of the team at Animal Services. The next slide. So why does this matter? So looking at cats, let's go this from 2023. So the blue line is 2023. So what was our average length of stay by month for a cat? So looking in January, I noticed we're just a little over 10 days. However, it was a little more challenging toward April. It was over 30 days, close to 35 days it took us to find an outcome during 2023 and the height in April. So if you look at that trend, you start to see that we're still providing the same level of care. We're still seeing that these pets come into our facility each and every day. We're still responding to these calls, yet we're doing it more efficiently, which not only helps the pets, reduces their overall stress, but let's face it, it also costs less. Because if we can find that positive outcome sooner, that means that taxpayers aren't paying to keep these pets in solitary confinement for longer periods of time. Next. The great news continues for dogs. So looking at 2023, it was never never below 8 days, and it did get quite high, close to 20 days, and then over 20 days toward that September time. And again, we want to make sure that we can ensure a positive outcome, and if we're doing it well and we're working efficiently, we can ensure that positive outcome faster. And so that's why I think that this is a really good metric for you as our advisory board to be monitoring and to be looking at, and it's also the metric that shelters across the country use as a great benchmark for us to identify how efficient are we at the shelter and how quickly we can find these positive outcomes, because I think all of us would agree that the best place for our pets is in our homes. Next slide. And now we're going to our updates with events. Did you have any questions before I go on to that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Next, we're going to cover special events with Denise.
Hi, guys. So I'm going to cover events. Our program coordinators were both busy tonight. They weren't able to make it, so they did give me a list. So I'm going to start with April. In April, we were quite busy with quite a few different events. Bree Burkett, who is our newest program coordinator. She actually went on Real Radio with Jim Colbert and did a podcast with him. I believe you can go onto their website and replay the podcast. She did a really good job, highlighted a lot of adoption interest information for everybody and also for fosters. During the month of April, we also went to the Lake Mary Fire Department, had a new fire station that they opened up. They had an open house and they invited us to take up animals there as well, which we did. The public was very open to us being there and had a great time. As Adam had mentioned before, in April, we also started the Dogs Playing for Life group. They came in with us for a week, did the first day of training, and then spent the next few days just supervising and making sure the employees and the volunteers were comfortable with doing the play groups on their own. We also held 2 volunteer orientations during April. During May, Bree went both to Fox 35 and Wesh 2 did featured pet segments. She took both animals to those events, and both animals that she took were actually adopted not long after. We did an off-site adoption event in Deltona at the pet supermarket. She took 6 dogs there, and again, all those dogs were adopted as well. In May, we also began, as Adam mentioned, we did the shelter swap with Orange County Animal Services. We're hoping to continue this as a program between the 2 shelters. Not only did we take dogs from them, but they came up and they took quite a few dogs from us as well. June kind of slowed down. It's getting a little hot, so we're not doing quite as many off-site events, but we do actually have one coming up in Jacksonville called the Mega Adoption Event. It is actually a weekend long. It's Friday, Saturday, and possibly into Sunday, depending on how the public perceives it. We have the opportunity to travel up there with our adoptable pets and hopefully find them homes in a different venue, which is always a good thing to try and get them out there to more public to see. During the month of June, we will also be having 2 volunteer orientations, and Bree will also be going to Fox 35 and Wesh 2. On June 29th, we will also have the blood bus at the shelter. If anyone is interested in coming out and donating some blood, can save a few more lives other than just animals, help those humans out as well. And that's all I have.
The other 2 that we'll be participating in is the Mega Adoption Event, which is in Jacksonville. If any of you haven't heard, it's within partnership with Petco, who's spending a significant amount to advertise for the event. There were over 1,000 animals adopted last year alone. There's close to 40 agencies participating, and so we'll be bringing pets at that Mega Adoption Event in Jacksonville, and that's the 28th and the 29th. One of the other things I wanted to mention very briefly, because I didn't acknowledge him yet, I wanted to congratulate a promotion within our department. James Pyle, who's with us today, who's been with us, provided 10 years of dedicated service to the county, starting in as our animal care specialist, all the way up to an animal control officer, and is now supervising the same position in which he held before. So I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate him because he's been doing some excellent work. So congratulations.
All right, next we're going to move on to the kennel statistics. Anybody on the board have any questions? Had a chance to look over those? All right. No questions, concerns? All righty. Then we are going to move on to the public participation. Do we have?
Yes, we do have public commentary.
Okay.
Okay, so the first person we're going to call up is Andrea Hubb.
And if you can, remember, please state your name, address. Remember, you have 3 minutes as an individual, 6 minutes as a representing an organization, and we ask that you please stick to that time.
Okay, it's Andrea Hubbs. I'm representing Seminole County TNVR. It's 411 Ipswich Street, Altamont Springs, Florida, 32701. And I'm just here to give an update. So it's just cat stats. In April, we TNVR'd 60 adult cats. 2 were from Animal Services. As you guys know, we are getting less from Animal Services because they're TNVRing the cats themselves. So most of the cats they give me now are like either owner surrenders or ones that they can't adopt out because they bit somebody or scratched somebody. We also in April took in 26 kittens, and instead of putting them back out there, we were able to put them up for adoption. So they're either up for adoption or have been adopted, and we use one of the local rescue groups here, Cats Can. In May, again, we TNVR'd 60 adult cats. 6 were from Animal Services, and we got 43 kittens vetted and either adopted or up for adoption. Luckily, I think kitten season is winding down, so we're very happy about that. Our organization itself has grown a lot. We've been in existence for like almost a little over 2.5 years. We now have 27 members, volunteers, doing all different kinds of things from grant writing, accounting, trapping, transporting, fostering. So we have grown a lot. We are still just relying on grant money and donations. So we are hoping to still be part of the county budget in the fall for, I think we said $25K. So that would help a lot because we did go through a rough period where we were in debt. We were in the red, but thanks to some nice donors, we did get back up, but we can't always rely on the donors. So, but the residents seem very appreciative. A lot of them are giving donations themselves, and some of them are actually joining our group to help out, to volunteer. So it's going really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Katie Fine.
Hello, good to see you guys again. My name's Katie Fine. I am a campaign manager with Change Save Seminole, the local campaign for supporting the shelter as part of Best Friends Animal Society.
And address?
419 Live Oak Street, Kyle, Texas. So I first just want to start off by saying that already this meeting has been better and more informative than the last couple that I've been to. I love the report that you gave. It's really refreshing, just feeling like we're being given all the data and things are feeling a lot more transparent. So I appreciate that. I also want to say that I have been in some form of animal welfare for my entire life. I'm Jewish, and for my bat mitzvah at the age of 13, I volunteered at a vet clinic. So I knew that I wanted to get into animals from a very young age. And since then, I've volunteered or worked at rescues, shelters, now with Best Friends. And so I am here because, just like you guys said earlier today, we all care about the animals and the welfare of the animals and the welfare of the people who care for those animals. So I'm going to throw out a couple numbers, but I want to preface it with saying that what I'm talking about is save rate. What was referred to earlier was live release rate. The formulas for these are a little bit different, so our numbers aren't going to match. I don't know if that necessarily matters at this point because either way we're seeing a lot of success. But the overall save rate in April with the self-reported data that we received from SCAS was 78%, and that's 3% over April of last year. It may sound small, but it's actually huge, and it represents 28 fewer shelter animals getting killed in 1 month over that same month of last year. There was also a massive reduction in intake that contributed to this, 125 fewer animals entering the shelter in April of this year versus April of last year, and that's huge. It is really huge getting. One of the hardest things to do, especially when you're talking to the public, is say that you can't take in as many animals as you used to, but it is such a necessary part of kind of getting all of our ducks or dogs and cats in a row inside of the shelter and prioritizing life-saving. So as you guys will hear from some of the other volunteers with Change Save Seminole, what we saw in the and save rates for the data is that cat life saving is through the roof. Like amazing things have happened. Dog life saving seemed to slow down a little bit, and so we just want to make sure that that is top of mind as we move forward and focus on consistency and maintaining all of these great efforts that are happening at the shelter. It's also important to note that in past years, May through November were the months of lowest life saving at Seminole County Animal Services, likely because of breeding, people traveling, owner surrenders, and other trends that cause increased intake in the summer months. April of this year was significantly higher than other months, just as it was in last year. Oh my gosh, I'm talking way too much. Can I have like 30 more seconds?
Go ahead.
Okay. We're not here to cause trouble. We're simply here to rally residents around their concerns. We're here today to encourage residents to become active in helping their shelter save more animals. It really seems like that is what's happening, and so we really appreciate that. And our work here is not done. We're gonna stick around as a resource to you guys, you know, as long as it might be needed and as long as it takes to get to 90% consistently. And, you know, so far we haven't had the chance to provide many resources directly to SCAS, but we are here if that time comes when y'all are ready to take it. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for all your great work, Adam. Thank you to all the shelter staff for all the great work that they do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pamela Blosser. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me join you. I am Pamela Blosser. I live at 5359 Lanyard Court, Winter Park, unincorporated Seminole. I adopted my first pet in 1982 and have done so ever since. In 2011, I adopted 3 pets from, or 2 dogs from Best Friends in Atlanta. And I'm very happy to say we've had 13 wonderful, healthy years. I have then been supporting Best Friends since that time. Both of those dogs have just passed recently, one 2 weeks ago. It was very sudden and very difficult. They were 14, but still. So the veterinarian and I talked, and I told him about Change Safe Seminole. He didn't know. He's in Castleberry. I told him about Best Friends. He didn't know. But one thing he said to me in the grief was, lean into serving, because the people who serve are the happiest. And I want to say to you, I know all of you are in service, and it's your career, and I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it. I'm nearing retirement, so now, instead of just giving money, I'm going to be also serving. So I really hope that you can be open to Best Friends Animal and the support. When I learned about them in 2011 and no kill, I thought, no way, that is impossible. Most of our country is no kill now, most of the states. Most of Florida is, but we're not in Seminole. And I don't understand, we're affluent, so why not? 4th worst in Florida last year, county-wise. So please continue the good efforts and the progress we're hearing. It's so rewarding to hear this, and it's helping me with my grief to give back and to thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jody Menor.
Hi, I'm Jody Menor, 1241 Alberta Street in Longwood, 32750. And I got involved with Change Save Seminole because I've always cared about the welfare of animals. And I wanted to be a part of improving the lives of animals in my own community. And I've been a Best Friends supporter for many, many years. And I just believe in the no-kill movement and a positive approach to animal welfare. But anyway, I volunteer for a really great rescue organization locally that focuses on helping people keep pets in their homes so that they don't have to go into the shelter in the first place. And I feel like this is one great way to support our local shelters. in that, from that perspective. But I also wanted to learn more about how our shelter works and what I can do as an individual to support our shelter. And have so much respect for the people that work and that volunteer at the shelters. It's, I just think, like, the heart-wrenching parts of it would be so hard. I know they work so hard. But I'm very encouraged by the positive movement over the past several months, especially the April data that I saw, and having Adam Leith come aboard. This is my third meeting that I've come to, and I am so impressed. So I just appreciate everything, and you guys too. You always have good reports, but this time you had, it seemed like a lot more that you guys have been able to do in the community, and I don't know if that's normal and it slowed down for a while, and then it increased just recently, but I'm really impressed, and I'm excited to be a part of this, and I'm not going to finish this, but I just wanted to tell you guys thank you so much for everything, and I hope to be a positive part of what we're doing here. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last of our public commentary.
Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to our fun part, the annual review of the Sunshine Law.
Yes, Andrew Lanius, County Attorney's Office. All right. Now, so per every year, the County Attorney's Office gives a little presentation about Florida's government and the Sunshine Public Records Laws and Ethics. That's what we're doing today. Well, if you guys have any questions, you can just shout out and I can answer whatever you guys need. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading the PowerPoints. I don't know that you guys have do they have this PowerPoint? So you guys don't have a hard copy, so if you guys could follow along on the board with me, that'd be perfect. Per section 20.05 of the Seminole County Code, the function of the Animal Services Board is to, quote, meet 3 times per year minimum and make recommendations to the Chief Administrator of Emergency Management regarding animal care and regulations. Feedback and recommendations regarding proposed ordinances, also to suggest areas where ordinances need amending or creation, and also ideas for new programs or changes to Seminole County Animal Services existing programs. As the Animal Control Board is a public body, there are 3 important things to remember. Public meetings shall be held in the sunshine. Now, the term sunshine means sunshine is a disinfectant against corruption. It's hard to be corrupt when everybody can see what one is doing. Public records is the second part of what we should remember is important. Public records, there's 2 important parts. They should be retained and distributed in accordance with Florida law. And the third thing that we're going to discuss today is public officer ethics. You guys are all public officers. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start with the government and the Sunshine Law. The Sunshine Law has 4 basic requirements. Meetings must be open to the public. They must be given, the public must be given reasonable notice of the meetings. Minutes of the meetings must be taken and promptly recorded, and the public has the right to speak on all propositions except ministerial and emergency matters. Now, the Government and the Sunshine Law applies to elected and appointed public boards, which is what we have here today, an appointed public board, and has been applied to any gathering of 2 or more members of the same board to discuss some matter which may foreseeably come before that board for action. In other words, if it is conceivable that the board will consider a matter, it should not be discussed in private. That could mean at lunch. If the 2 of you go to lunch together and discuss matters that may be presented here, that would be a violation. That could also mean social media or text messaging as well. The Sunshine Law applies to meetings and discussions conducted via telephones, computers, email, and other electronic means. This includes text messages on private phones, so long as they are conducting public business. One cannot conduct public business unless we are here and before the public. The use of non-members, such as county staff and commissioners' aides as liaisons to circulate information and thoughts of individual board members is also prohibited. In addition, staff and other non-members should refrain from asking commissioners in order to provide the information to other commission members to state his or her position on a specific matter. This is known as polling, which will foreseeably be considered by the board at a public meeting. Written reports circulated among board members for comments, where such comments can be seen by the other board members, is also a violation of the Sunshine Law. Board members may not engage in an exchange or discussion of matters on social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, website blogs, or message boards that may foreseeably come before the board for action. Public access to meetings is one of the key elements of the Sunshine Law, and board members are advised to avoid holding meetings in places not easily acceptable to the public. Therefore, the use of luncheon meetings should be avoided, as these meetings tend to have a chilling effect on the public's willingness or desire to attend. We want to only hold meetings where the public can easily attend if they do choose. The term open to the public, quote, open to the public, end quote, means open to all persons who choose to attend. This includes all members of the press, competitive bidders, employees, whomever. Everybody has the right to attend. Frequently asked questions. Question: must written minutes be kept of all Sunshine meetings? Answer: while tape recorders may be used to record the meetings, written minutes of the meetings must be taken and properly recorded. Are board members authorized to abstain from voting? No. Board members who are present at a meeting must vote unless there is or appears to be a conflict of interest under Florida statutes, which we're going to get to conflicts of interest here in a few minutes. Exception: in a quasi-judicial proceeding, a member may abstain from voting on such matters if the abstention is to assure a fair proceeding free from potential bias or prejudice. What are the notice requirements when a meeting is adjourned to a later date? If a meeting is adjourned and reconvened later to complete the business from the agenda, the adjourned meeting, the second meeting, must also be noticed. I would say be noticed in the same exact way as the initial meeting was noticed. Does the Sunshine Law restrict a board from taking action on matters not on the agenda? No. May a member of the public tape record a board meeting? Yes. Does the Sunshine Law apply to one board member meeting with one member from a different board? No. Not unless one of the individuals has been delegated the authority to act on behalf of his or her board. Penalties for violation of the Sunshine Law. Civil penalties up to $500 against each participating member. A knowing or intentional act is not required to violate this. Criminal penalties. They include incarceration and fines for any board member who knowingly attends such a meeting or has a prohibited contact in violation of the statute. So it can be very serious. Award of reasonable attorney's fees against the board found to have violated the Sunshine Law can also be issued by a judge. Any action taken at a meeting tainted by a Sunshine Law violation is void. In addition, a violation may require the board member to hire private counsel, either for private suits or for state attorney actions. And as we all know, private counsel can be quite expensive. Now I'm going to move to the public records portion of this. Chapter 119, Florida statutes. Florida Public Records Law provides for citizens to have a virtually unlimited access to the records of government. Public records means all documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software, or other material, regardless of the physical form, characteristics, or means of transmission, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance, or in connection with the transaction of official business by any agency. It's the definition of public records. If the purpose of a document prepared in connection with the official business of a public agency is to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge, then it is a public record regardless of whether it is in the final form or the ultimate product of an agency. It is impossible to lay down per statute or per case law, It is impossible to lay down a definition of general application that identifies all items subject to disclosure under the Public Records Act. Consequently, the classification of items which fall midway on the spectrum of clearly public records on the one end and clearly not public records on the other end will have to be determined on a case-by-case basis. Though, if it's a close call, generally it would be most advantageous to err on the side of caution and consider such document to be a public record is to not violate the Florida statutes. Examples of public records subject to the Public Records Law absent an exception: computer records, email messages, text messages, which can be on a work phone or a private phone, messages through social media accounts, even if the account is a personal account. If it's related to business here, it's a public record that would have to be provided through Florida law. Financial records, those include bids, budgets, personal financial records. Litigation records and personnel records are all public records subject to Florida Public Records Law. Potential sources of electronic public records: public records on public agency servers, emails to and from email addresses, public records on social media and other web-based accounts administered by the public agency, public records on public agency-issued cell phones and electronic devices, public records on privately owned personal cell phones, personal devices. That includes personal social media and other web-based accounts of public agencies' officers and employees. Public records means those records already in existence. There is no requirement to create a public record in response to a public record request. Personal versus board-related accounts devices. When you are using a personal device or account, but you are using it for board business or board communications, you are, in fact, creating a public record subject to Chapter 119 Florida statutes. That public record must, under the penalties we already discussed, be disclosed if a request for that record is received. That public record must be retained and not deleted in accordance with Florida law. This includes emails, text messages, photos, and voicemails. You can create separate accounts for official board business to facilitate a clear separation between personal records and board-related public records. But you cannot circumvent public records law by using a personal account to exchange, store, manage, or track information related to board business. As a member of a public body, you are responsible for timely and appropriate responses to public records requests that you receive. The county is not generally required to reformat its records to meet the requester's particular needs. And, importantly, a person's motive in seeking access to public records is completely and utterly irrelevant. The county cannot ask the reason for the public records request, and generally cannot even ask the name of the individual making the public records request. Statute does not allow for that. A custodian of public records must acknowledge requests for public records promptly and respond to such requests in good faith. Although there is no time limit for compliance, which would be provision of the public records, stated in the Act, the Florida Supreme Court has stated that the only delay permitted, quote, is the limited reasonable time allowed the custodian to retrieve the record and delete portions of the record the custodian asserts are exempt or confidential. The penalties for violation of the public records law. Individual violations can be prosecuted criminally or in civil court by citizens or companies. The county can be assessed attorney's fees for failing to comply. A board member can be removed from office for failing to comply as well. Now we're going to move into the Florida ethics portion of this. Did anybody have any questions so far? Okay, perfect. Section 112.313 Florida statutes, standards of conduct for public officers. This includes any person serving on an advisory board, for which all of you are. Section 74.3 of the Seminole County Code incorporates Section 112 Florida statutes and applies to all appointed boards of Seminole County. Part 3, Chapter 112 Florida statutes, Florida's Ethics Code. Florida's Ethics Code. This is prohibited conduct. Soliciting or accepting of gifts, doing business with one's agency, unauthorized compensation, misuse of position, which would be a special benefit for yourself or somebody connected with you, conflicting employment, or disclosure of certain information. Question: may a person sit on a board as a public officer when that board regulates the industry of that person's employment? Answer: yes. Florida Statute Section 112.3137B reads, "This subject does not prohibit a public officer or employee from practicing in a particular profession or occupation when such practice by persons holding such public office or employment is required or permitted by law or ordinance." Example: CEO 84-63 held that when a Port Authority member was required to be a representative of business entities doing business with or at a port, the member's employment as vice president of a shipping company at that port was considered exempt. Question: may a school board member's company sell mandatory school uniforms to parents of children who attend the school? Answer: yes. The sale of uniforms to parents of school children is permissible. However, sale of uniforms to the school board or schools in the school district is prohibited. Question: does the prohibition against unauthorized compensation extend to the public officer's family? Answer: yes. Under Florida Statute 112.313, subsection 4, the prohibition against unauthorized compensation extends to the public official, his or her spouse, and minor children. Other relatives, including a son-in-law, are not covered by this prohibition. This applies when a public official knows, or with the exercise of reasonable care, should know that it was given to influence a vote or other action to which the officer was expected to participate in his or her official capacity. Section 112.3143 Florida Statutes Voting Conflicts: shall not vote in a matter that would inure to his or her private gain or loss, or that of a principal business associate, parent organization, or subsidiary thereof, or relative, father, mother, son, daughter, husband, wife, brother, sister, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, or daughter-in-law. If you have a voting conflict, before the vote is taken, you should disclose the conflict at the meeting, abstain from voting, and file a memorandum that discloses the nature of your interest within 15 days to be incorporated with the minutes. No appointed public officer shall participate in any matter which would inure to the officer's special private gain or loss, which the officer knows would inure to the special private gain or loss of any principal by whom he or she is retained, or to the parent organization or subsidiary of a corporate principal by which he or she is retained, or which he or she knows would inure to the special private gain or loss of a relative or business associate of the public officer, without first disclosing the nature of his or her interest in the matter. Voting conflicts. Special private gain or loss means an economic benefit or harm. These are the factors to consider: the size of the class affected by the vote, the nature of the interest involved, the degree to which the interests of all members of the class are affected by the vote, the degree to which the officer, his or her relative, business associate, or principal receives a greater benefit or harm when compared to other members of the class. Now, to participate means any attempt to influence the decision by oral or written communication, whether made by the officer or at the officer's direction. That is the conclusion of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
You did an excellent job.
I try to read fast for everybody's sake. Does anybody on the audience have any questions? And nor is a very hard word to say, so forgive me. But thank you. I appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah. Andrew, we appreciate that. We know that's a once-a-year thing, and that's tough to get through, so.
Thank you.
The next thing we need to do is confirm our next date for our meeting, which will be, I have listed September 12th. Do we have any issues with that at this time?
Good for me.
What day does that fall on?
It's a Thursday.
Should be Thursday.
It's the second Thursday of September.
I do have a conflict,
Okay.
but if it works for everyone else.
We should just keep it for now, and then, I guess, because when she puts it out?
Yeah, there's.
'Cause you use that about 3 weeks in
Yeah,
advance.
she put it out about 3 weeks. I remind everybody about 3 weeks prior, so
Okay.
that if there's any major conflicts, we can try to work through them.
Okay, so for now, we'll just keep it as September 12th. Everyone good with that? All right, anybody else have any questions or issues? No? All right, meeting adjourned. Good night, everybody.